Oh, what a mess.
This is Neil Schneider from Meant to Be Seen. Welcome back to my still very messy basement. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I love immersive technology. Virtual reality, stereoscopic 3D. An area that I've really become excited about is audio, in particular sound cards that make our computer audio sound a lot better. Well, today is no different, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you my product review for the EVGA Nu Audio Pro 7.1 surround card, so surround sound card. And I really put this through its paces. Today I'm going to share with you my results. So we'll be back with more right after this. So what I have here is the EVGA Nu Audio Pro surround sound card. There's two versions of this card, okay? So the straight Nu Audio is the main card, okay? But if you get the Pro version, it includes a second card that ties to it so that it gets cabled together, and it lets you connect discrete 7.1 surround sound speakers. So let's talk first about the main card. Talk a little bit about the hardware. It has a headphones jack. It has an optical SBDIF or a TOSLINK connector. It has connections for left and right speakers, so external speakers. Comes with RGB lighting, so you can do cool things. Now, it's not external RGB lighting. It's the RGB stuff that comes on the card itself. And it's powered by a SATA or an SATA connector. So this is the same type of power connection that you would use for your hard drives. As I mentioned, that there's in the case of the Pro, there's a main card, and then there's a second card that links to the first. And this second card is if you're going to connect surround sound speakers. And when I'm talking about surround sound speakers, I'm talking about those analog speakers that connect directly to the sound card. And it supports both 5.1 and 7.1 surround sound. So that includes the key speakers, and that 0.1 is for the subwoofer. Now, something to be aware of is that if you are looking to benefit from that surround sound experience, when two cards require two PCI Express slots in your motherboard. So make sure you have enough space for the sound cards if you do need both of them, on your motherboard. So these are the general specifications of the card. So it supports 32-bit 384 kilohertz audio. Now, I know that's a mouthful. So the 32-bit refers to how much information the sound card could handle at a time, and the 384 kilohertz refers to the audio resolution. Okay. Now, the decibel rating, or the dynamic range rating, is 123 decibels. So this is effectively the ratio between the loudest and the softest sound. So just as a comparable, the human ear is estimated that it could hear up to 120 decibels. So this is a little bit higher than what the human ear should be able to do, and we lose some of that ability as we get older. If you're into recording audio, if you use the line-in jack, so that's a direct connection for, let's say, your mixing board or whatever you're using to record, it supports a recording rate of 384 kilohertz, 32-bit line-in. If you're using a microphone, it's 192 kilohertz, 24-bit mic. Again, these ratings, I know they're big numbers and so on. They're higher than what you could probably hear anyway, but just it's part of the spec. Now, if you're into surround sound through headphones, this uses the Nahimic 3D virtual surround sound system. So it's some IP that they recently added to the sound card as well. So what did I test with? So what I used for testing equipment? Well, my computers are very consistent here. So they both run on Gigabyte Z170 XP SLI motherboards, and that's important because the onboard audio is actually pretty good. In this case, the Gigabyte motherboard audio is pretty good. Different motherboards have different motherboard audio quality depending on what you're using. So in my case, I think it's at the higher end of what you can expect out of a motherboard. The graphics cards, of course, but they are different on each machine. So during testing, one machine was based on an NVIDIA GTX 1070, and the second was based on an AMD R9 390X. And the CPUs are the same. So they're both running on an Intel Core i7 6700K. So this it's not the latest, greatest stuff, but it's good mid-range equipment. Now, as far as actual audio equipment, for headphones, I was using my trusty Skullcandy Grind. They come they work either in wired form or in Bluetooth form. For all my testing, I use wired because Bluetooth by nature cannot support the same audio quality that you can get through wire. So again, 100% wired. For surround sound, I had two output choices. So option one, which by the way, I'm going to actually review it later on, is the Onkyo TX NR595 surround sound system. I'm going to have to actually review that as a product. And that surround sound receiver is connected to Pioneer S11 speakers. So it's a good, it's a mid-range setup for a surround sound system. And then for direct connect on PC, so when I say direct connect, I mean the actual speakers connected directly into the sound card, I used Logitech Z506 speakers. Now these are very standard, nothing fancy speakers that you can get for a PC. They're not expensive at all, but again, it was a good for testing. So what did I actually test? Well, for video games, I went through parts of my library that I know pretty well. Star Wars Battlefront 2, Doom, not the latest version, I'm afraid, but Doom 2016, which is still a lot of fun to play and really good for audio testing. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, I know it's an older game, but it's actually really good for audio testing, to hear the different cues and where things are coming from. And Star Trek Bridge Crew, which again, very good for surround sound testing and so on. For movies, I only tested one. In this case, it was Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. The truth is, you can't go wrong with any Star Wars movie when it comes to audio testing. And I didn't actually have to go very deep here for reasons I'll explain a little bit later. But it was enough to test this one movie for audio. And then for music, I went through my CD audio collection. I'm a little bit embarrassed that it's as old as it is, but it works. It works. It's good for audio testing. Tom Petty, The Police, Toto. Anyway, I went through the list. So anyway, so that's what I did for testing. So let me tell you, before I start going into the results, let me share, I talked about the hardware. Let's talk a little bit about the software that drives the EVGA Nu Audio Pro. So you have standard playback options. So you've got a speaker volume balance screen. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that later. You have the setting for the surround sound via Nahimic. So that 3D virtual surround sound for your headphones. You have an option for reverb, so you could get the audio to sound in a way that's with certain room characteristics. So whether you want something coming out of a concert hall or a church or whatever it may be, you can make the audio sound different ways. It has a compressor. So the way I would describe it is it helps harmonize the audio. It's really a matter of taste. So let's say you have you're listening to some rock music, and you want the instruments to sound as though they're at the same level as the voice, or maybe you want to reduce that. So this is adjusted through compression. So that's an option that you have in the playback settings. It's up to taste. You all these things you could turn on, you could turn off. It's all up to personal taste. The equalizer settings, you have both basic and advanced settings. So the basic stuff is bass boost, like oompa, 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 voice clarity, and treble boost, which is those high frequencies. If you go into the advanced mode, you can control everything right down to the kilohertz rating. So really good stuff there. Recording, I really didn't go into recording all that much. I'm not a musician. The core settings there are voice stabilizer and noise reduction. The one thing I did find that's worth mentioning, something for EVGA to work on, is that when you use a microphone, if you plug a microphone into the sound card's microphone jack, it will not work. It will not work unless you have the Windows audio panel open. I don't know why that is. I suspect that should get fixed up in a future driver release. But other than that, not a big deal. So before I go into my results, okay, let me share some advice with you as to how to get the best experience out of this sound card. So for headphones users, okay, so if you're using one of these, make sure that if you're playing video games and in the Windows configuration, that it is set up for stereo. Okay, so just two speaker, headphone stereo sound. Do not try to set it up for surround sound thinking that you're going to get surround sound in the headphones, because that's not how it works. If you set it up for surround sound, which by the way I did and I learned the hard way, what will happen is you're in your video game or in your audio experience, you're going to notice that audio elements disappear. So, you'll see like a pile of flame in front of you and you turn your back towards it and suddenly you're not hearing it anymore. What you have to do is, again, set it up for stereo. And what happens is the volumetric 3D, or in this case, the Nahimic 3D system reads those cues from the stereo and other aspects of the content. So that's how you set it up. Now, if you're connecting speakers, okay, so if you're actually connecting surround sound speakers, either 5.1 or 7.1 surround sound, you have to do an audio balancing, okay, very important, because if you don't do that audio balancing, you're going to find that you're not hearing the audio cues where you think you're going to hear them, or not so much where, but you're just not going to get the full audio experience, okay? This is how you do it. It's relatively simple. So there is in the EVGA Nu Audio panel, there's a speaker volume page, and there's a test. So step one, make sure your speakers are properly placed. So you got your left, you got your center speaker, you got your right speaker, you got the two surrounds that will be behind you. A 7.1 surround sound setup is a little bit different. You could actually find, I would encourage, if you go to let's say a Dolby site or any of these surround sound recommendation sites, you'll find diagrams of how speakers should be placed. So get your speakers properly placed. Make sure in the new audio panel you turn the high-res feature off, okay? Because when it's on, you won't be getting the surround sound experience. You have to turn it off so that surround sound setup works. Now, when you run the tone, you're going to press the test button and you're going to hear a tone running across the speakers, like bing, 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 bing. It's going to go right around. What you're going to find, if your experience is like mine, is that the front speakers are relatively loud and the speakers behind you are relatively soft. And it's probably going to be according to how far the speakers are away from you. What you want to do is you want to make sure that, and it's all subjective, it's from your seated position, that as that tone is going around the room, that it sounds like it's at the same volume, okay? That you perceive it as being the same volume from one speaker to the next. Now, the first instinct might be, okay, I got to make those speakers louder. No, you don't want to do that. Actually, it's the opposite. What you want to do is those softest speakers will be your baseline. Now, maybe it's your front speakers, but my experience is usually the rear speakers. So you're going to use the softest sounding speakers as your baseline, and you're going to reduce the loudest speakers down to the level of those softest speakers, okay? Now, the exception to the rule is the subwoofer. The subwoofer, ignore the subwoofer. You're only worried about the main speakers. So in my experience, what happened was the front speakers were about half the volume of the rear speakers, and the center speaker in the front was a little bit lower than the left-right speakers because the center speaker was closer to me, okay? So when you press that test button, what should happen is the tones are going around, and from your point of view, it should sound as though that tone is at the same volume all around, okay? Now, I found that with the subwoofer, the settings in the panel didn't really have much effect, okay? You may have to actually just adjust the subwoofer volume directly, and that's according to taste. It's not the same, it doesn't follow the same standard as the other speakers, okay? So anyway, follow this process, and I think you'll have a very enriching audio experience from it. Now, there is a bug, okay, and EVGA knows about this bug, is that if you use their main volume panel, so let's say you make it soft and then you make it loud, it's very easy to lose this audio balancing information. So if you reduce it to 0 and increase, you'll find all your speakers are at 100%, and you will no longer see the difference in volume between them, and you have to go through this balancing again. So what I would encourage you to do is when you find the settings that are right for you, write them down, and then it's very easy to re-enter them. And better yet, before you enter your games, make sure you have it, you're at the volume you want to hear them at, and then you don't run into trouble while you're playing your games. Now, general findings. Okay, so now we get to the fun stuff. So, headphones. I thought the audio sounded great. I mean, it's fantastic for music. I thought it was really good for video games, especially with straight stereo. Okay, no extra processing. I thought it was really rich. I was really happy with what I heard. The 3D positioning, so the Nahimic 3D, I would describe it as a mixed bag. Okay, it's better than just stereo on its own, because you do get additional, positioning. Let's say you're playing a video game and you kind of have an idea of where things are coming from, if things are in front of you or behind you. So you do get some positioning, but it varies. Okay. If I were to compare it to actual surround sound speakers, so speakers instead of headphones, the speakers would always win. But still, it's better than just stereo. I personally, I like that volumetric 3D functionality in headphones. Now, to get the best results, it's better with games that are not overloaded with audio. So if you're in like one of these Warzone games where gunfire is going off all the time and there's not a moment's peace, it's going to be very easy to not get meaningful audio cues. On the other hand, if you're in a slower paced game and there's an opportunity to listen to different elements of the audio, that will be much more enriching, especially for volumetric 3D audio. The other thing, and this was a recommendation from EVGA, which was a good one, is that if you reduce the bass, okay, so like it doesn't do so well with bassy noise, but at the higher frequencies, it's easier to pick up the audio cue. So I would encourage just to try it out if it makes a difference for you, is to reduce the bass a bit in the game. You could do that through the EVGA Nu Audio Panel and the equalizers. The other thing, no, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, one more thing. Yes. The headphones. Okay, different headphones will perform differently, and there's no rhyme or reason. Like according to EVGA, they say, it doesn't matter if the headphones are expensive or they're not expensive. There's just no way to know for sure, but some headphones perform better than others when it comes to this volumetric 3D functionality. So you're going to have to experiment with that. Now, for surround sound, okay, so there's two types of surround sound setups. There's the analog setup where you plug the speakers directly into the sound card, and it does the digital analog conversion for you, or you have a surround sound receiver which connects to surround sound speakers and so on. So first off, for the analog setup, I tested on Logitech 506 5.1 speakers. Very, I'm generously calling them mid-range. I mean, they're very affordable speakers. In my opinion, the audio sounded great. I mean, I was really happy with it, especially when the audio was balanced as I described before. I do think they sound better than motherboard audio. And I know in the case of my Gigabyte Z170 XP SLI motherboard, they do pretty good audio on that motherboard. Motherboards have come a long way, and this was excuse me, I think this was better than what I got out of that. Now, the catch though is it is very easy for that audio to fall out of balance. So again, use those recommendations I said earlier, write down your settings so it's easier to recover. Again, I'm not sure if the subwoofer control does anything. What I had to do with my setup is I had to adjust the subwoofer directly according to personal taste. But I found results I was very happy with. On the digital side, okay, so the way you would connect this to a surround sound system on the digital side is there's an optical SBDIF or a TOSLINK connector. Okay, it's basically a fiber optic cable that connects between the sound card and your receiver. Now the thing is, okay, something to know about optical connections, or in this case the TOSLINK connector, is that it doesn't have the same amount of bandwidth that an HDMI connector would have. So what they have to do in order to make that surround sound possible, because they have a limited amount of bandwidth to work with, is they have to compress the audio. Okay, so they have to get the same amount of audio through, but using less data to get that through. And the way they achieve that is they use like a Dolby digital encoding mechanism. So basically they use Dolby to compress the audio, send it through, and play it back through the receiver. The trade-off from what I read is that technique reduces the audio quality to 16-bit audio versus 24-bit or higher that you would get through an HDMI connector. It sounds pretty good, but I would describe it as being thinner audio than what you would normally get through HDMI. Now, so when I was listening to Star Wars, I was watching Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, I got all the surround sound effects. It's just that the audio sounded thinner than what I would normally get if I was playing, let's say, from a DVD or a Blu-ray player, directly to the receiver, or even through cable television. It's just the audio was thinner. I mean, I think that's the best way to describe it. And that's not a limitation of the sound card. It's a limitation because of that TOSLINK connector that they have limited bandwidth to work with. The other thing to be aware of is that unless the content is encoded in this with Dolby, okay, it cannot do surround sound. So if you have a video game and you want to play in surround sound, if you try to play it through that optical output, like through the TOSLINK connector, you will, the speakers will work. You'll get audio out of your 5.1 or 7.1, whatever it is. But the thing is, it will be stereo. It won't be true discrete surround sound where each speaker represents a unique channel. So I don't think the TOSLINK connector is really a high demand type of connector. If the surround sound is important to you, you're either going to use the analog connectors to mid-range or really good speakers, as I described earlier, or you're going to do it through headphones. I think it's unlikely that you're going to use your optical connection for surround sound, because there are better options. Now, so what do I think of this card? Okay, so I'm going to share my findings in two parts. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to share with you my general thoughts on the card and score it. And then I'm going to share with you what I think could be done for it to score even higher. And where I really want it to be. So let me summarize it like this. I think the EVGA's Nu Audio Pro 7.1, it's a great sounding card. I mean, you plug it in, you play back your music, you play some games, especially in stereo. I found the audio is very rich. I think the hardware, I mean, I think if memory serves it, the MSRP or the retail rate for this is approximately $300 US, and you can tell where the money's going. I mean, the components are top grade components. A lot of value there. And what I really liked is that it doesn't really require a lot of adjustments to make the audio sound good. I mean, out of the box, it's a good sounding card. And I know I keep talking about the motherboard audio. I have other solutions, like a laptop computer. I have other solutions that I've used. And I do think that the audio that you get out of this card is superior to what you would get out of a motherboard. So I'm very convinced on that. So based on these criteria, I'm going to score the card at 7.5 on 10, or 7.5 out of 10. Now, that said, I think this card deserves to have a higher score. I think it can score even higher if certain criteria are met, and it's not a big bridge to cross. It's just a checklist of things to do that I think will make a world of difference for this card to score even higher, and that the users will get even more value out of their out of the $300 they put into this. So again, I think the hardware is great. This is how they can score some extra points. So first, I know I've repeatedly brought this up, and they're aware of it, that audio balancing if it's very easy to lose that audio balancing. They need to fix that bug. I mean, that for sure. I know that a lot of audio sounds really good just out of the box without having to make any adjustments, but I found that the adjustments that are available to you are somewhat limited. I mean, you can, some have on off, some are like you have 3 choices. I would rather have a dial. Like, I'd like to really adjust it according to what I personally like. I like having that flexibility, and that, the equipment that we use may warrant having more flexibility. So that would be a very useful thing that I think EVGA could easily add. A feature I like with other vendors is that even though the content may not be designed for surround sound, through processing, they still find ways to benefit from this surround sound experience. So if I play music, for example, I'll get audio not just from the left and right and center speaker, I get a touch of audio on the rear speakers as well, and somehow they find the right elements to pull out. So I think it would be good for EVGA to find ways to take advantage of their audio further, and to take advantage of the speakers and the setups that users may have. When it came to the balancing for the audio, it was a little bit cumbersome. Like right now you have to press a test button and patiently wait for the tone to go to the speakers around you and listen carefully. It would be much easier if you could just click on the individual speaker and hear the tone and adjust the volume on the go. It's just a convenience thing. So what they do right now works. It's just I'd like something a little more convenient. Now, I couldn't really rate this on the card, okay, but it is something I would really like to see EVGA implement. Is other cards have like a what you hear device or a stereo mix device, and what you can do is you could take the audio from the sound card and send it to whatever output you want. So I could have the audio coming from, let's say if EVGA had it, I could take the audio from the EVGA Nu card and send it to my virtual reality headphones, or send it to my HDMI-backed surround sound system. I mean, they have this beautiful audio coming out of the card, and I think there's all kinds of solutions that could benefit from it. All they need to do is, I'm saying all you need to do is probably no small task, but it would be really good if they had that similar functionality in their card, that these other solutions could benefit from the audio that EVGA has to deliver. So, again, lots of value for this card. I think I would encourage you to try it out, but I think it will be better than what you're getting through your motherboard. And I think that the card has a lot of potential with just some software updates. So anyway, we'll be back with more right after this. Thank you for visiting me in my messy basement. So next week we have a very special episode of Neil's Messy Basement. I've actually been trying a lot of new things. I know this sounds crazy, but until recently I didn't have a Netflix account. And I just tried Disney Plus for the first time this past week, and I'm really just catching up. I know it's an embarrassing thing to admit out loud, but I'm catching up. Anyway, I made a discovery, and what I discovered was this. for whatever reason, even though Disney Plus supports surround sound on Sony PlayStation, on Xbox, on Roku, on Apple TV, other solutions as well, they don't support surround sound on PC. In fact, I contacted Disney Plus's technical support, and they confirmed, yeah, we don't have surround sound on PC. And I was in disbelief. I mean, surround sound like on a Star Wars movie, you can't get, like, that's unheard of. Well, the good news is I did figure out a way to get surround sound on PC. Not just on PC, but you can actually get it out of your analog speakers and all kinds of surround sound setups. I'm really pleased. Also, just in case Disney is watching this, there's nothing illegal going on here. It's completely legal. It's just that you have to follow a process to get it to work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that next week. I'm really excited about this. So looking forward to reconnecting. This is Neil Schneider from Meant to Be Seen. We'll talk again soon.